I have that direct experience because of the arts. There are so many examples I could give you, and I hope you've seen them in your own schools, where you go into a classroom. Let's just take, I've just done a huge project of the Ancient Mariner, Coleridge's Ancient Mariner. And we had 150 children, 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds, working on it. Now, by the time that they'd worked with us for a few weeks, most of them knew the poem intimately. Some of them could recite all of it off by heart. But they were all involved. You know, inner city school, supposedly mixed ability children, but actually, you know, they all completely got it, and they'll remember it all their life, I'm sure. But I have had those experiences where even teachers have said to me, well, you won't have much luck with our lot, I'm afraid. Or there's some that'll get it, but I'm afraid they'll have to put up with the others. You know, lots and lots of phrases that suggested that even the teacher didn't really believe that the children had it in them to be profoundly excited and caught up with what Coleridge's imagination was doing and what this Ancient Mariner story was about. And who also assumed that if you were going to get them with poetry, it just had to be something that was urban and street, and that that was the only way in, which it's not. I've had so many examples where children have come alive for the first time because of the relationship with music, the relationship with dance, the relationship with verse. And again, I'm talking to the converted, I know, but they've gone on then to think, well, actually, this particular poem about a place that Seamus Heaney has written or Ted Hughes has written gives me some interest in that land, in that geography, in that place. And they've moved their curiosity barometer as a result of something they've done in the arts, and they've moved it to another place. So their ability to learn, because you've lit that spark in them, their ability to learn is transformed. So my crusade has always been, if the right to art is a human one and a human need, why are we withholding it from people? And why are we grading the arts as something which can be a luxury extra item that you sort of fit in to learning if and when possible? I've always been utterly confused and baffled by that, since I've always understood that if you allow children the access to their own imagination and the fertility of an artistic imagination, then their curiosity is engaged in all kinds of other ways. But if I was a scientist, I'd be equally determined to say that to you about science. And it would be equally true, I'm sure. Because all children, when they're young anyway, they can find some excitement in everything, and they can grow from there. So the curriculum at the moment, being so dedicated still, as Ken said in the David Putnam film, to a sort of 19th century system which started with facts and has put wonderment somewhere further down. We're still basically wrestling with that, and I think it's to do with human rights. Some people at Eton have the rights to every wonder that's available, and they go on, understandably, to run the world. And other people start with the facts that we want to give them, and the wonderment's something they've got to go out and find for themselves. Well, of course, they are going out and finding it for themselves. That's what's so interesting, isn't it? Outside of the school system, I meet up with young people all the time who are doing the most fascinating things on their own. They've got their own curriculum going in their own neighbourhoods, on their own internet systems, on their own chat rooms. So you've got parallel education systems happening. Couldn't we bring them together? I know that's what you're involved in. I'm sitting on a committee at the moment called Fair Access to the Professions. It's chaired by Alan Milburn. It's a short, sharp committee with far too many recommendations for the things that it's trying to achieve, and whether or not it will then be given the remit to achieve them, I don't know. The startling facts are these, that we have a downwardly mobile society now, that we were at the top of our upward mobility somewhere in the late 70s, and we are now travelling back down again. And I don't say that to be a doom-monger at all, but sitting around this table with me were the army, the legal professions, health, social work, local government, education, all the professions. There were 20 people around the table. manufacturing, CBI, etc., financial sector. The evidence of every single professional sector, including the arts, is that the professions themselves have less mobility than they did 20 years ago. There are less people coming into those professions from disadvantaged background than 20 years ago. And very high statistics to that effect as well. And the reasons given are that young people from disadvantaged backgrounds are no longer living in neighbourhoods or communities where they will know somebody who does something that's outside their experience. So neighbourhood ghettoisation is part of why children can no longer go, you know, I've met an engineer and I know what they do because he lives down the road from me, or my uncle's one. This isn't happening. And the professions are, by and large, completely disengaged from schools and learning. I'm not saying they don't run some mentoring schemes, I'm not saying they don't do bits and pieces, but as a joined up framework, adults, professional adults, do not engage with the school system on a daily basis. They have lots of opinions about schools, but they're not there. Now, they may think they're there as parents, but because we have such a segregated school system, they'll only know about their particular experience. And the further you go up in the professions, the more evidence there is that those professionals aren't sending their children to state schools anyway. So I think we have a huge challenge at the moment of feeling that schools have been sort of left to get on with themselves. Well, a lot of interference on one level and not enough involvement on another level. So even though we are, of course, and should be intent on helping our children and our young people think about their citizenship responsibility, what about the rest of us? Not you, you're doing it, you're at the coalface. But what about the citizenship responsibility of everybody in all the professions? What are they doing for children? What are they doing for young people? Very little is the answer. And if you're going to change the curriculum and say this is what they should be learning about and this is how we should be learning, I would suggest as well that you should ambitiously ask the professions that are actually guiding community life in all kinds of ways. I think you should be asking them to play a much, much bigger part in not how they deliver education, but how they use their spaces and how they encounter young people. And I'll give you an example of something that we've been doing at the moment. At Southbank Centre, we have had for 2 terms a school in residence. They come at 9 o'clock in the morning and they leave at 4. Their parents drop them off at the Southbank Centre and they pick them up again at 4. They're 8 and 9-year-olds.